My name is Sam Newton, and I am an artist. I'm a member of the Quaid Gallery Artist Collective here in Tampa, Florida. I work as a marketing and exhibition coordinator for Tempest Projects, which is a nonprofit gallery also here in Tampa. And I have a almost 2-year-old son, Valentine. And I have a bonus baby, Julian. He's 10. And my partner, Justin, is also an artist here in Tampa, Florida. We are in our house here in Seminole Heights. We just moved here probably 2 weeks ago, but we are happy to be back in Seminole Heights, coming from Lutz, just because everybody that we know is here. Herd of Thunder is basically a show featuring all of these weird horse paintings that I have been making since right around when the pandemic started, actually. And then shortly after that, I found out I was pregnant, and it kind of just went from there. It was an idea. I mean, horses have always kind of been prevalent in my life. I was a huge horse girl back in the day. I used to go trail riding with my mom, and I have all these memories when we first moved to Florida when I was like 11. We would drive to like Odessa. We would literally just drive to Odessa, and my mom would pull off anytime we saw horses, and we'd like pet the horses or feed them carrots. And if there was a stable that was open to like guests coming in, we would do that, and that was how we spent like our weekends. So I was like huge into like collecting like Grand Champions and Breyer horses, and I loved horses, and I worked as a stable hand, and I have hundreds of horse figurines from childhood, but one that I've like kept and held on to is just one that I always thought kind of looked like me if I was a horse, like a cute little horse. It has like bangs and like a baby face. I don't know, I just always was like, this is me. When I would play, it was like, this is me as a horse character. And look at how happy he is too. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, come full circle now, like 20 years later, and I was really getting interested in looking at these images of horses fighting, because you see these majestic, beautiful, large creatures, and then you see them fighting and they're like barbaric, and they're like, it's very violent. Yeah, so I was just looking at these images, and then I started making like these sketches of horses kind of in like a dialogue with one another. And for me, it was very, I don't know, not cathartic, that's not the right word, maybe a little bit cathartic, but I'm used to using like the figure or my own body to kind of tell some sort of story or depict some sort of emotion. So using these horses, because they're very emotional creatures, they have these big eyes, and their faces are very, they have a lot of expression. Horses, I mean, another thing that's interesting is that they're like this they're all muscle, muscular, strong, and then like so delicate, like they break a leg and you have to put them down. Like there's no coming back from an injury like that for a horse. And then historically, I mean, there are horse paintings, in caves. In historic paintings, you'll have horses like going to battle, and I feel like a lot of times the horses have just as much like expression and emotion, terror on their faces as like the soldiers riding them. And then they're also compositionally always like in these very strange perspectives, or they'll just be like very 2D, like flat. So I've taken sketches for some of these from historic paintings, just because I'm like, that is a weird looking horse. But it's part of like this huge painting where that horse is not like the main part at all. It's just like something that stands out. The thing about horses is it's a horse. This is a collage I made. It's a horse, but you can draw it like a million different ways. That's a record that I should have bought just for that. But yeah. The first one I made, I was painting simultaneously as I was making a sign for Julian. For the first Black Lives Matter protest that there was here in Tampa. Yeah, it was like early June, and I found out later that day that I was pregnant. So it was after we protested, and I came back, and this was during COVID, so we were all wearing masks, and I come back and I was like, oh. My previous body of work, what I was really interested in was kind of like manipulating the form in a way that would kind of show that, I don't know, this power struggle between who is in control, like whether it was like control of your own, like autonomy, like your own body, or like in relationships, and just like this kind of power struggle. And so I was already using kind of like these animal-like or cat-like women, or body parts like long, elongated limbs and like tangles of limbs. And I don't know, the pivot to a horse kind of was pretty fluid, because I mean, it just made sense to kind of move in that direction, because they are an actual real creature and not like a human cat hybrid. I mean, I did focus a lot on portraiture when I was in like undergrad, and it was always like myself, and I felt like that kind of, it made it really hard for a viewer to take it as anything more than what it was. Even if for me it was like, there's so much like going on in this painting, and people were like, they stopped at the fact that it was just my face or my body, and they couldn't get past that, no matter how weird I was making them. And I think it's really interesting, body language. I don't know if I feel like your face can say one thing and your body can just be like, being like a whole different story. I also think that being able to manipulate and like do weird things with like a body, whether it's a horse or a humanoid or human, I think that having like these tangled limbs, or where you can't really tell where one body ends and the next body begins, it adds another layer of like the context of emotions or invisible dialogue that's just going on, that I think is really interesting. And compositionally, it gets really interesting for me. A lot of times I'll start with like a thumbnail or a sketch, and sometimes I'll go into it with marker or watercolor or colored pencil, depending on how into the initial sketch I am. And then from there, it can become a painting. Sometimes they'll become a sculpture. Sometimes they are just, I have paint set out and I just start into a painting, and then I just bust out a painting without a sketch. Or I'll have made sketches that are similar, but I won't be following any like specific drawing. I was using oil paint for a really long time, up until I was pregnant. And working in acrylic is a lot different than that, as I'm sure painters out there know. It's just completely different from oil painting in that you don't have, I mean, it's plastic. It's a plastic, so it's drying faster and it has like a different texture. But the thing that I think is really interesting is you can kind of work into it. I mean, I feel like there are no rules for acrylic paint, whereas oil paint, there are many rules, and it takes forever to dry. And it's toxic. But for me, what I really enjoy, because I'm really into mark making, I can go back, I can make any kind of mark. So color pencil, I've been using Valentine's crayons that become like a watercolor when you add water. So they mix weird with the acrylic, which is cool. And then pen, pencil, I mean, the sky's the limit. I'm able to make work that I wouldn't be able to make in the speed that I make it, in the situation that I'm in right now. This piece I finished this morning. I actually started it last night. It was one that I just wanted to try and get in with the group of pieces for Herd of Thunder. And it's called Out to Pasture, parentheses, keep on trucking. Because at the end, I don't know, I just kept looking at that foot and it just reminded me of that Crumb drawing. But I thought it was funny because the horse doesn't particularly look thrilled that he's being ridden, but maybe he is. But this this painting started as a drawing. It was one of the first drawings that just like a sketch that I had made along with some of the other ones that are paintings now as well. And I've drawn it a few times, some with a rider and some without. But when I did this drawing, I knew that I wanted, along with a few others, I wanted it to be like square compositionally. I wanted it to show like a lot of, there's not necessarily, I mean, there's a lot of movement in the limbs, but there's not a lot of room for this this guy to be going. But there's a lot of movement, but he's not going anywhere. And that's something that I enjoy with using like really like tight fit composition. And for some reason, his hair kind of reminds me of like a highway of hair. We've been watching a lot of Cars around these parts. The movie Cars, featuring Owen Wilson. But I've been using a lot of patterning, I've done it in my drawings and my paintings, but it's, not only does it help compositionally, but it's like something I can do without really having to pay a lot of attention. So it's something that I can do while I'm sitting down on the couch with Valentine, or I can do it really quick in between something else that I'm doing. It's just a way that I can make paintings these days. So it helps. In a lot of these, the line work does help to enhance or highlight the movement that I want these limbs to be having. Sometimes I have a little laugh because a lot of like horses, they all have bangs, so it's not hard. I feel like I can just and that's me as a horse. Not that they are me as a horse, but they all have bangs and I can relate. Well, anytime you make a series of, or like a body of work, I feel like it gives more power to the overall idea. It's not just like a one-off painting. I'm excited to see them all together because I feel like they will make sense in a way that maybe they don't yet. For me personally, because obviously I see them all as being like these little moments in my day-to-day life, or conversations or arguments, or different situations. Like I have ones that are like tantrum, or just, these horses are having these experiences that I also have.